Welcome back to Irenic Works. Quick reminder before we dive in. This show uses Claude, Anthropic's AI, to help with research and source scoring, and I'm your host, a Latter-day Saint, which matters since LDS is one of the 9 groups we score. Full disclosure, every episode. Finalizing current sources, we will review the last few items that might be added and considered. The problem is that even as I write this, there might be some scholar or priest somewhere across the planet that is looking through some old library or walking across the Vatican and finding some book that has been hidden for a couple thousand years, or some kid might be throwing more rocks into caves and finding more lost writings like in Qumran. As always, Claude assists with research. Mistakes happen. Flag them in the comments. And yes, I'm LDS, one of the 9 groups this show scores. Episode 8A introduced 9 newly passing sources from the latest Registry review. But the Registry still had loose threads, 2 texts with conflicting score sets, 1 exclusion that never got its full explanation on screen, 4 sources nobody had made an individual call on, and a fragment versus quotation distinction that actually changes what counts as a candidate in the first place. Today, every one of those gets closed out before the scoring begins in earnest with Season 1A. Here's a fun one before we get into the resolutions. The Achmim fragment. Our actual physical copy of part of the Gospel of Peter was dug up in 1886 and 1887 from an Egyptian monk's grave where it looks like it had been buried as a devotional book. Real parchment, real find, real if incomplete content. Which is exactly why it's getting a second look today. Episode 5B excluded the Gospel of Peter at Step 3 for incompleteness. On closer review, that call needed a sharper distinction. The Gospel of Peter is a genuine fragment-level manuscript survivor, the Achmim fragment, plus some smaller Oxyrhynchus scraps. It's incomplete, but it's a real physical document with continuous narrative content, including the crucifixion and resurrection scenes. We're reclassifying it as a legitimate Step 3 survivor, eligible for full scoring wherever it's topically relevant, the Lost Gospel series, for instance. Compare that to the Gospel of Bartholomew, which stays excluded. No direct manuscript survives for it at all. Every line we have is reconstructed from quotations in later writers. That's the real Step 3 line. Not complete versus incomplete, but an actual surviving document versus no document. Only second-hand report. Now, 2 duplicate score sets that never got reconciled into single numbers. First, the Kolbrin Bible. We had 2 independent scoring passes on file, 40/60ths, 70 and 55 70/75ths, that never got merged. The reconciled average comes out to 48/65 73rds. Both original passes already failed Axis 1, theological alignment, individually, so the reconciled number doesn't change the verdict, just gives us 1 number instead of 2. Worth remembering what this text actually is. Claimed ancient Egyptian and Celtic origin transmitted through Glastonbury Abbey, but its earliest actually documented trace is 2003, and its modern promoters are tied to Planet X and 2012 circles. Same problem, opposite outcome, with the Mantina archives. 2 score sets, 60/85/80ths and 65/85/85ths, reconciled to 63/85/83rds. Both original passes already cleared all 3 axes individually, so this confirms the pass, rather than changing it. This text claims to continue the Book of Mormon's Haygoth narrative through a people called the Nemenhah. LDS apologetics organizations reject any real connection, and it's widely attributed to a single modern author, but it passes our Step 4 rubric on its own textual terms, and that finding stands regardless of the authorship question, which is a separate matter from scriptural content. Next, Mysteries of Heaven and Earth. This one's a good example of a text that clears the content bar, but still fails on grounds the bar doesn't measure. It's a medieval Ethiopian Gaia's cosmological compilation attributed to Abba Bahaila Mikael, describing the hour-by-hour creation of the angelic ranks, Satan's cosmic size, and a Watchers-like narrative of beings who taught humanity the arts of civilization. Its raw scores, 60, 70, 70, clear the floor on all 3 axes. But it's excluded on attestation grounds. It's a documented late medieval composition, not an ancient or apostolic-era text. Same precedent as the Kebra Nagast, a categorical exclusion layered on top of a passing content score. Same logic we used to exclude 1 and 2 Maccabees, military material, for being primarily secular historical. Now the 4 flagged sources that needed individual review calls. These didn't fit neatly into any existing rule, so each one got its own look rather than a blanket policy. Calls 1 and 2 are the easy ones. Kephaliah of the Teacher is the core teaching text of Manichaeism, a distinct new religious movement founded by Mani that draws on Christian, Zoroastrian, and Buddhist elements. It doesn't fit our Jewish pool or our Christian apocryphal pool because it isn't attempting to be either. Excluded categorically, no step 4 score needed, and the Fairest of Ibn al-Nadim is a 10th century Arabic bibliographic catalog, a reference work about texts, not a text claiming scriptural status itself. It was never a real candidate. It only entered this review as background material, same exclusion, same reasoning. Call 3 Enoch is the one that actually earns its place, if only barely. It's genuinely Jewish, but it's late Hekalat or Merkabah mysticism, roughly 500 to 600 AD, well outside the Second Temple window the other Jewish BCE analog texts sit in. It centers on Enoch's transformation into the angel Metatron and a lot of throne vision cataloging. It clears the floor on every axis, 62, 75, 60, but only just on moral teaching density. We're flagging it on screen as marginal, the same treatment secondary sources got in episode 8a. It's in, but nobody should read it as a comfortable pass. Call 4, Testament of Isaac, comes out the other way. It's a genuinely mixed case, a Jewish Testament core, plausibly BCE or early AD, with a later Christian redaction layered on top. Genuinely difficult to date. Genuinely mixed in a way the other 3 calls today weren't. But a text whose own core identity is this contested doesn't get the benefit of the doubt as a clean fit for either pool. We're excluding it rather than defaulting it into either category for convenience. So here's where the registry stands. Everything that was open going into this episode is now closed. 1 reclassification, 1 reconciled pass, 1 reconciled fail, 1 attestation exclusion, 1 marginal pass, and 3 straightforward exclusions. Season 0's entire elimination arc, episodes 5A, 5B, 6A, 6B, 8A, and 8B is complete. Season 1A starts scoring against the baseline next. The Mentina archives passing our rubric while LDS apologetics organizations themselves reject it is worth sitting with for a second. It's a good reminder that this show's pass isn't an endorsement of a text's truth claims, and it isn't a stand-in for what any tradition, including mine, actually accepts as scripture. It just means the content cleared a specific 3-axis bar. Those are different questions, and this episode is a clean example of why we keep them separate. Here's where the 3 sources we actually scored this episode land: Kolbrin, Mentina, and 3 Enoch. Kephaliah, Fairest, and Testament of Isaac were excluded before scoring, so they don't carry a composite. Every score on this channel traces back to a specific text and a specific reason, including the ones that took 2 full episodes and multiple rounds to resolve. That's the whole method. Full sourcing is in the description and the companion scripture and sources document for this episode. If this show's been useful, hit like, subscribe, and genuinely tell us what we got wrong. Corrections make this better. That's the whole point of showing our work. What should we cover next? Tell us in the comments. If it fits our method, it might move up the list, and with that, the foundations are done. Starting next episode, all 9 groups get scored for the first time. Episode 9, What Happens When You Die, covering heaven, hell, Hades, Sheol, and soul sleep. Read cold from the plain text before any tradition's theology gets layered on. This is what everything since episode 1 has been building toward.